When I was a kid, I hated school with a passion that adults found concerning. They'd say things like, "These are the best years of your life," or "You'll miss it when you're older." Spoiler alert, I don't miss it at all. I think what they really meant was, it only gets worse from here. And do you know what? I wasn't wrong to hate it. School wasn't education, it was domestication. A decade-long training program in obedience. Looking back now, I can see exactly what they were doing. And it's way more fucked up than just boring math classes. School is literally training in slavery, and I mean literally. From age 6 or 7, you're taught that your body doesn't belong to you. You can't stand when you want to stand. You can't sit how you want to sit. You can't go to the bathroom without permission. You can't eat when you're hungry, only when the bell says you can. Think about what this does to a developing brain. During the most formative years of your life, when you're learning what normal means, normal becomes, I don't own myself. My most basic biological needs require someone else's approval. You're being wired at the deepest level to accept that autonomy is bad, obedience is good, and your desires don't matter. And it works. By the time you're an adult, you don't even question it. Your boss treats you like property, normal. Your time isn't yours, normal. You need permission for everything, normal. You've been trained since childhood that this is just how life is. If a child exists somewhere other than school during school hours, it's literally a crime. They've criminalized children's freedom. They've made slavery compulsory and called it education. School operates exactly like a minimum security prison. You're legally required to be there. If you don't show up, they come after you. They call it truancy, but it's forced confinement based solely on your age. Everything runs on bells. Bell rings, you move. Bell rings, you stop. Bell rings, you eat. You're being trained to respond to signals like Pavlov's dogs. Except instead of salivating, you're learning to surrender your autonomy to arbitrary sounds. You need permission to perform basic bodily functions, like raising your hand and asking another human being if you can go pee. What kind of dignity-stripping bullshit is that? They do this to children for years and then wonder why adults struggle with self-advocacy. The architecture itself screams institution. Long hallways, fluorescent lights, rooms with one door that you can't leave without permission, windows you can't open. But sure, tell me again how this is a place of learning. Interesting how school rewires your understanding of happiness. Remember how you felt on the last day before summer break? That explosion of joy, that feeling like you could finally breathe again. That wasn't happiness. That was relief from captivity. Real happiness isn't the absence of something awful. But school teaches you that's exactly what it is. Happiness is when the bell rings. Happiness is Saturday afternoon. Happiness is summer vacation, 3 months in my country, which sounds generous until you realize it's the minimum time needed to partially recover from 9 months of institutionalization. This is why adults leave for weekends. Why they count days until vacation. Why retirement is seen as the ultimate goal. School programmed us to see happiness as the gaps between obligations rather than something that should be woven into daily existence. They tell you school is about education, but let's look at what you actually learn. Sit still for hours. Speak only when permitted. Your thoughts, your questions, your ideas, they're interruptions unless they fit into the approved discussion window. Complete meaningless tasks without questioning their purpose. Write essays about books you don't care about. Solve math problems that have no connection to anything real. Memorize dates of battles in wars that mean nothing to you. In my case, geography lessons were particularly frustrating. Why the fuck learn about other countries when you live behind the Iron Curtain and, as we thought back then, you will never get a chance to see any of them? And never ever ask, why are we doing this? You also learn to accept arbitrary authority. The teacher is in charge because she's the adult. Period. Doesn't matter if she's wrong, cruel, incompetent, or teaching you outdated nonsense. She has the grade book, so she has the power. You learn to compete against your peers for approval. Grades create artificial scarcity of success. Your classmates aren't collaborators, they're competition, and everyone knows exactly where everyone stands in a pecking order. Actually, grades are the most brilliant control mechanism ever invented. In my school, your grade wasn't just recorded, it was announced out loud to the entire class. Immediate public ranking of human worth. I still have a strangely vivid memory like it was yesterday. I was walking home after school, and one of the top students in our class was walking right in front of me. I kept staring at the soles of her shoes, thinking, there goes a normal person, and I'm not even worth the dirt on her heels. We had to carry grade books home for parents to sign, a permanent record of daily performance that followed you everywhere. Parents losing their shit over anything less than perfect marks because grades had become the only measure of a child's value. Grades don't measure intelligence, creativity, wisdom, kindness, innovation, or any actually valuable human quality. They measure compliance. How well did you follow instructions? How accurately did you repeat what you were told? How thoroughly did you suppress your own thoughts to regurgitate the approved answer? The skills that matter in actual life, critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, problem solving, aren't just unmeasured by grades. They're actively punished if they lead you to question the assignment. You can guess what kind of grades I had. School isn't just about individual conditioning. It's about creating social hierarchies and teaching you to accept them. The popular kids, the nerds, the jerks, the jocks. We had a lot of jerks. I definitely was a separate category. The jocks, the outcasts, these aren't natural categories. They're manufactured social structures that teach you early. Some people matter more than others. Some people deserve contempt. Your value is determined by arbitrary social markers. Bullying isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. It teaches victims to accept abuse from those with social power. It teaches perpetrators that cruelty has rewards. It teaches bystanders to keep their heads down and not challenge the hierarchy. And teachers usually know exactly who's bullying whom, but addressing it would mean acknowledging that their classroom is a micro-dystopia. So they tell the victim to ignore it or tell an adult, teaching learned helplessness and dependence on authority figures who won't actually help. Where I went to school, teachers often participated in the bullying. Public humiliation was considered pedagogy. And who do you think you are? Don't think you're the smartest one here. Didn't forget your head at home, did you? What's so funny? Come on, share it with the class. Let's all laugh together. Luckily, physical punishment was already out of fashion, but shaming was absolutely normal. This wasn't seen as abuse, it was seen as motivation. At the age of 5, children can play for hours, turning a cardboard box into a spaceship and a stick into a magic wand. They ask why about everything. They are natural scientists, artists, philosophers. Then school happens. There's only one right answer. Stay inside the lines. Don't ask questions we're not covering. We don't have time for that. That won't be on a test. Stop daydreaming. Pay attention. Don't draw during math class. That last one was my personal disaster. I was always drawing pictures in my school notebooks during lessons, and I was constantly shamed and laughed at for it, both by teachers and students. By high school, most kids have learned the lesson. Creativity is punished, conformity is rewarded. Your weird ideas, your different perspective, your unique way of seeing the world, these are problems to be corrected, not gifts to be nurtured. They take naturally curious creative beings and turn them into anxious approval-seeking robots. Then they wonder why people can't think outside the box. Maybe because you spent a decade punishing anyone who acknowledged the box was there. Let's do some math, the kind they don't teach in school. 10 or 11 years, depending on your country, 180 to 200 days per year, 6 to 8 hours per day, that's roughly 15,000 hours. Add homework, 2 hours per night minimum, another 4 to 5,000 hours. That makes almost 20,000 hours of your childhood. 20,000 hours where you couldn't choose what to learn, when to learn, how to learn, or whether to learn. 20,000 hours where your natural interests were irrelevant. 20,000 hours being told your instincts were wrong, your energy was excessive, your questions were inappropriate. And what do you get for this massive time investment? The ability to factor polynomials? Knowledge of the Krebs cycle? The capital of Mongolia? The ability to recite poetry you never chose to read and solve equations you've never used since? Most adults can't remember 90% of what they learned in school, because they didn't actually learn it. They temporarily memorized it for a test, then deleted it to make room for the next round of meaningless information. The kids are forced into a high-stress, competitive, exhausting environment. Their worth is judged daily. They are given no autonomy, no privacy, no respect. They are told their feelings don't matter, their interests are wrong, their energy is a problem. Then, when they break, everyone acts like it's mysterious. Must be social media, they say. Must be video games. This generation is just weaker. No, it's spending their entire childhood in an institution that treats them like products on an assembly line. They always said school was preparing you for real life. They were right, just not how they meant it. School prepares you to sit in a cubicle for 8 hours, doing meaningless tasks for someone else's profit. School prepares you to accept that most of your waking hours belong to an institution, not to you. School prepares you to wait for permission, follow arbitrary rules, and never question authority. School prepares you to see your peers as competition rather than community. School prepares you to value external validation over internal purpose. School prepares you to believe happiness is something you get during breaks from real life, rather than something that should be your real life. In other words, school prepares you to be a perfect employee in a soul-crushing system. It prepares you to accept exploitation. It prepares you to be grateful for scraps. It prepares you to never imagine anything better. Imagine if instead of forcing kids into boxes, We actually let them learn. Kids are learning machines. They don't need to be forced to be curious. Curiosity is their natural state. You have to beat it out of them to make them incurious. What if kids could follow their interests? Deep dive into what fascinated them. Learn from people actually doing things in the world rather than from textbooks about people who did things. What if collaboration was valued over competition? What if mistakes were seen as learning rather than failure? What if questions were more important than answers? What if school was a place you wanted to be rather than were forced to be? This isn't utopian fantasy. There are schools doing this right now. The saddest part isn't the time wasted or the creativity killed or even the mental health crisis. It's that most people never recover. They leave school thinking they're not math people or not creative or not smart because school couldn't recognize their particular intelligence. They spend their adult lives recreating school patterns, seeking approval, fearing authority, competing rather than collaborating, waiting for bells to ring. They never unlearn the lesson that happiness comes from the absence of obligation rather than the presence of purpose. They pass it on to their kids. You have to go to school. These are the best years of your life. I survived it, you will too. The cycle continues. I hated school because some part of me knew it was bullshit. Some part of me recognized that this wasn't education, it was preparation for servitude. Kids know. That's why they resist. That's why they hate it. That's why summer vacation feels like being let out of prison. Because it is. The system drugs the ones who resist too much. Authorities label them disordered. Institutions break their spirits until they comply. Then society congratulates itself on their education. If you hated school, you weren't wrong. Your hatred wasn't a character flaw or a phase of immaturity. It was your spirit recognizing captivity. It was your soul rejecting domestication. It was the last free part of you saying, "This is not okay." And if you're an adult still carrying that feeling that school was somehow wrong, that those weren't actually the best years, that something valuable was taken from you, you're not crazy. Something valuable was taken from you. Your time, your creativity, your autonomy, your natural love of learning. Even music schools suck. Of all the kids I studied with, most never touched their instrument again after the final exam. The question isn't why some kids hate school. The question is why we force all kids into an institution that makes so many of them miserable, anxious, and convinced they're failures. Actually, wait, I know why. Because miserable, anxious people who think they're failures make excellent employees. They work hard for approval they'll never quite get. They're grateful for whatever they're given. They don't question the system because they've been taught the problem is always them, never the structure. School isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. And then you grow up and hope that some meditation will set you free.